Welcome to Architrave Gaming. I'm Archmaster Matthias. This is the second episode of Atop the Arch podcast. So, I was on Reddit the other day, of all things, of all places, and someone was asking about game design in general. And so, as an actual, as an actual tabletop game designer, what are the actual goals of game design? Like, what are we doing? Not the individual mechanics, but like, what kind of experiences are we trying to give our players? Like, what is the point of game design? And so I told him my philosophy on it, and I might as well share it here. So I'm going to actually read the comment that I wrote. A game is a voluntary undertaking of unnecessary challenges. Why do we undertake these challenges? Because it feels good to overcome a challenge. Therefore, a challenge must be sufficiently enticing, so you want to overcome it, difficult, and rewarding. Now that that's out of the way, the four fundamental principles of game design are freedom, power, status, and mystery. This is what every facet of game design falls into. One or more of these four pillars. You want to give the players each of these four pillars. You want to give them freedom, let them make choices and feel autonomous. You want to give them challenges, powers that oppose them, and then the feeling of triumph and other rewards when they overcome those challenges. So that is the feeling of power that opposes them, and then they overcome it and they get the power. That's why monsters and treasure are, linked. It's like, you can't have one without the other. That's kind of the whole point of killing monsters, to get a treasure. And it doesn't have to be gold, it can be a reward of some kind, but a challenge and then overcoming the challenge. That's power. You want to give them status, which is relationships and social interaction. You could call it freedom, power, relationships, and mystery. I call it status. Even though, like, in the modern world, it's like, oh, high status means, like, you're rich into this. I'm not talking about status in that way. I'm just saying status meaning social status. Just your relationships with others. Freedom, power, status, mystery. Yes, you want to give them status, which is relationships and social interactions. Give them connections to other people, whether NPCs or fellow players or what have you. Lastly, give them mystery. Mystery isn't really its own pillar, but more like the shadow side of each of the other three pillars. If there is some freedom of choice and something to explore, then it has to be hidden beforehand. Otherwise, there's no discovery. There's no exploration of something you already see. If you have treasure and monsters to obtain and monsters who oppose you, that means you have not obtained it yet. It is not in your grasp. It is hidden or obscured, mystery. It's like there's the treasure, and the mystery side is you don't have it yet. It's still hidden from you. You get status when you interact with people, but those you have not interacted with are still sources of potential status, not actual status. It is obscure. It is mystery. The whole point of game design is to give them interesting ways to obtain these pillars. It's the whole point. We are giving the player who sits down to play our game, whether we're a GM or an actual tabletop game designer, we are here to give them freedom, power, status, and mystery. These are the fundamental principles innate to mankind. Like, you don't need a special reason, like, oh, why are these fun? Because we're humans. Humans enjoy freedom and power and, connections to people, status. And we love seeing something that we don't have yet and going after it, mystery. We enjoy freedom, we enjoy power, we enjoy status, and we enjoy pursuing what we don't have yet, tantalizing mystery in all its forms. That's what I just said. So, yeah, that's what we're going after. It's just innate to humans. This is what all game design is about. This is what all products in the whole world is about. This isn't just games. This is just everything in life. Now that you have this framework of freedom, power, status, and mystery, you can go throughout the rest of life and look at cars and, guns and buildings and food. Like, absolutely everything in the world is one or more freedom, power, status, mystery. Those are the four things that appeal to humans. Freedom, power, and status, mostly those are the things we want, and mystery is, the potential to have those things. So we pursue the stuff that we don't have yet, that we don't know about. That's why we're curious, right? Because, like, there's more freedom, power, and status behind that mystery, right? So we're attracted to it, but the mystery isn't really the thing we want. We want the freedom, power, and status. So, yeah, that's it. And then I went on, and he asked for more explanation. So, as an additional bit of info, the pillars are usually gained in a certain order, and by doing things that fall into three categories. People usually gain freedom first. So this is the order. People usually gain freedom first, because without freedom and choice, you generally don't get to interact with the world much in the first place. Without the freedom to go out and pursue power. Like, if you don't have the freedom to do it, you're not going to get the power. Freedom comes first. First, you have to be, unshackled, break your chains, and then you can go out and explore and gain power and have social. If you're still bound by something, then you don't have freedom. You don't really have anything. Power is next, because after you gain the option to attempt something, you can practice to be proficient at it. You can actually get the thing. Next is status. After you have done great things with your freedom of choice and power of accomplishment, you get respect and honor from those around you. The king isn't a king just because. He's a king because, he went out and, had the freedom to go out and do stuff, and then the power, he accomplished something, and then he got rewarded for it with social status. All right. Now we're telling you how you get freedom, power, and status, and this is generally the ways you want to give it to the players. This is how it's gained in real life. This is also the way that the players should gain it, generally in a game. Freedom is gained through discipline, which in this case means the self-control needed to actually make a choice and not to try to do everything. It is voluntarily giving up the paths you don't want so you can have the paths that you do, the things that you do. Power is gained through sacrifice. To gain in-game power, the players should make sacrifices appropriate to the power they're trying to receive. If they want 1,000 gold, they should sacrifice hit points, resources, time, goals, friends, opportunities, etc. to gain it. That's what the whole point that gold, treasure, is in a dungeon with dangerous monsters. That's the whole point. You have to overcome a challenge. It's not just free, right? That we as humans know that everything is earned, and we shouldn't just get stuff for free. We want to earn it. We want to fight. We want to have something challenge us, and we want it to actually be able to beat us, because otherwise it's not a real challenge, and we are getting it for free. Status is gained through responsibility. When the players take responsibility for something in the world, that's when they gain social status. They rise in rank in a societal hierarchy. Whoever has the most status also has the most responsibility. Look at the king, who has responsibility for a whole kingdom, therefore has the highest amount of honor among men. And then mystery is a tricky one. It's hard to grasp it because it is the shadow, not the substance, of the other three. But in a sense, it does have its own substance. By knowing and withholding something, you feel the presence of mystery. You are the mysterious one. You have the hidden knowledge. In Tabletop, the Game Master has almost all of the mystery because they know something about the world the players don't. They know, pretty much everything about the world. So the GM is the fourth pillar one. They have all the mystery, and the players are the ones after freedom, power, and status that the GM has behind the screen. He knows the monsters and the locations and the plot, and the players. The whole point of the game is that the players are here and they have, they want freedom, power, status, and mystery. The GM has it all, but it's hidden behind mystery. That's the whole GM screen. It's symbolic of the mystery protects all the freedom, power, and status I have behind here. So the whole point of the game is the players reaching over that screen, through rolling dice and fighting monsters and getting more of that, information, more of that, cool locations, magic items, rewards, treasure, powers, NPCs to meet. That's the whole point of the game. It's transferring things from the realm of mystery to the realm of light, where the players actually get to enjoy it. It's also symbolic when you look at, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. It's, you're out there on the surface world, and then you go down into the underworld, the dungeon, where it's dark. You go into mystery. You go where people don't know what's there. Then you come out with the treasure, right? It's the whole point of dungeon crawling in dungeon crawlers. It's, we're out here on the surface world, and the treasure is underground in the dark places. It's in mystery. It's dangerous down there, monsters, but there's reward, and we don't know what's down there. And so the whole point is going down there, use your freedom of exploration. And once you map an area and discover it and bring your torch, right, you are taking that discovery, that freedom, exploration, and you're replacing the mystery with exploration, with freedom. Now you have the freedom to go everywhere because now you know what's there, right? And when they're monsters with treasure, right? Oh, they're monsters. This is a power opposing me. I'm going to fight that power and win. Now I get the treasure. Now I have the power, right? And then NPCs, people you haven't met yet, you meet them, you form relationships with them. That was status you didn't have, and now you do. That's the whole point. It's it's archetypally in our minds that there's freedom, power, and status hidden behind mystery. And it's our job as humans to go out and get it. That's why we enjoy video games and tabletop and movies and all these things that show that. That's why we like plots in our movies and why we don't want spoilers. This is so innate to us. We want there to be mystery and we want to go discover it. That's just who we are. In Tabletop, the Game Master has almost all of the mystery because they know everything about the world that players don't, but you'll see many players itching to have some mystery of their own by having some secret they're hiding in their backstory, or they plan to betray the party and are secretly a werewolf or something like that. So there's that. If you have any more questions, let me know. I love comments. Ask me more about this. I can do follow-up videos if everything isn't perfectly clear. Okay, next subject in this little podcast of ours, we're going to what makes the game fun. This is something that I have, opinions on, very strong opinions about this. And by the way, as a quick break here, I'm starting a Kickstarter, hopefully within like a month and a half. It's my own setting. I don't have the map in here, but it's my own, D&D setting. Of course, I'm playing it with my own system, but still, it started out with D&D setting, so it's completely compatible. But yeah, it's a grimdark archipelago. I call it the Grim Darkipelago. And I've been playing it for years with like almost a dozen people. I think we have like 11 people who played this, so like very close to a dozen people. But we've been playtesting it for years. We're having so much fun. We've gone through levels. We've had like high fantasy and dark fantasy. Like we've done like grimdark, where like the characters like giving up like their class features and parts of their soul and stuff in order to get the stuff they needed to actually win the campaign. It's like, But of course, we've also had like slaying the Kraken as it flies through the surface of the ocean and you're flying above it using the trident of sea. I shouldn't spoil anything, but like we've had like super epic and super dark, and it's all wrapped up in this setting, and we're hoping to kickstart it soon, and it's just going to be epic. It's set in my own setting and everything, and Lord willing, this will actually be my career later, so you'll see much more of this company, Architrave Gaming, and what we release, because it's going to be epic. But anyway, keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. All right, back to this. What makes a game fun? I have opinions. We all want fun. What makes something fun? The 4 pillars. The ones I just mentioned: freedom, power, status, and mystery. How do we experience the 4 pillars in tabletop? This is all in the context of tabletop from now on. How do we experience the 4 pillars? Through a narrative. How do we experience the narrative? Through immersion. We're not just reading a book, we are at the table. Immersion. How do we get immersed? Through challenge. Challenge immerses you. What makes something challenging? The possibility of failure. What is failure? Bad consequences, things you don't want. So, in order to make something fun, you need possibility of bad consequences, things you don't want, and then it goes up from there. You can't have fun without the possibility of failure. The players must be sufficiently challenged in order to take the game seriously, so that they can be immersed, so that they can really pay attention to the narrative, which is how they get the 4 pillars of freedom, power, and status, and mystery, which is how they have fun. If a player is not sufficiently challenged, and if there aren't sufficient consequences, then they treat the game like a joke, and they don't take it seriously. You can't be really immersed in something that you don't take seriously. Taking something seriously is similar to considering something to be real. You have to think it's real in some part of your mind and take it seriously in order for the DM's words telling you that you have a magic sword to mean anything. If you think the game is a joke and you don't actually think you got a magic sword, then you're not going to feel the pillar that comes with that. Like, ooh, I got new power, right? You have to actually be in the world and believe it. It has to be real on some level to you. If I tell you right now, by the way, you have 10,000 gold, your character just got 10,000 gold, and you have a +5 magic sword, and you have a pet dragon. Do you actually feel like, yeah, whoa, this is so cool? No, you don't. Why? Because you don't believe it. It's not real to you. But at a table, when everyone is agreeing that this is our fantasy and this is what we're doing, the more voices, the better, then it feels more real to you. And so, yeah, that's this here. In order for something to feel real, you have to be immersed. Like immersion and believing it's real, it's kind of the same thing, right? And in order to feel, immersed, to pay attention, to the game, it has to be challenging. If everything's a joke, everything's light, everything's whatnot, it doesn't really feel real to you. And getting the stuff just doesn't really matter. If you think, so you have to challenge the players for them to really pay attention and take it seriously, because they might lose something they care about. And if they're paying attention, that means they are immersed, and that means when you tell a narrative, then they actually believe it. And so you tell them a narrative of the pillars, like, hey, you got the freedom, power, and the status and the mystery. And so they really feel like they have the pillars, and then they're having fun. So yeah, that's it. Challenge is absolutely essential, and not just challenge without consequences. There has to be failure, there has to be potential consequences that are really bad in order for them to be like, ooh, I really don't want to fall. Like, when do you pay the most attention in life? Is it when everything's going well and there's no danger and there's safety and you're like, shopping at Walmart or something? Or is it when you're balancing on a tightrope and there's a 1,000-foot fall and you could die? Like, which one are you going to be more present, more paying attention, more immersed in the moment? Like, I am here, I am right now, I am nowhere else, I am immersed in this moment. It's going to be when you're being threatened. And, you know, you can say, well, my character is very immersed. Well, yeah, sure, because the character is in the world, but the point isn't to, like, the reason we come and play tabletop isn't so that our characters have a great time, it's so we have a great time. We're the priority here, we're the ones playing. So it's about you being immersed. Therefore, you have to be threatened. You have to be challenged as the player. You have to say, man, I really don't want this bad thing to happen to me. I don't want to lose my character. I don't want to lose my magic item. I don't want to lose the quest, etc. There has to be something that you care about. Not just, oh, my character doesn't want to lose the thing, but I'm okay with it. Well, then you aren't immersed. The character is, but you aren't. The whole point is that it has to be dear enough to you. The GM has to threaten something dear enough to you that you don't want to give it up. And that's when you're present. That's when you're right there. My Grimdark game, where their HP stopped at level 3, like they didn't get any more HP past level 3, and the level cap stopped at level 6. So, you know, you didn't gain any HP for 4, 5, or 6, and then you just stopped there, and that was it. For the rest of the game, you're capped at level 6, because anything beyond that, you're too superhuman. And we played Grimdark, and they had like 20 health, and it was dangerous, and it was scary, and there were, you know, shadows and undead and monsters. I don't want to spoil the Kickstarter, but anyway, there was so much really cool stuff in there. And they loved it. They came back every single session, every single time. You know, one of my players is like, man, this is so tough and hard, but I'm addicted to this stupid game. Because he couldn't let go, because it was so immersive. It gripped him, because there was challenge, there was threat, right? That's, you as GMs, that's what you want to give to your players. You want to threaten them. I'm not saying everything has to be grimdark. I'm saying it can't just be this loosey-goosey, oh well, nothing really bad happens, I'll fudge a dice roll to keep your character alive. No, nothing's real. You know, in season 2 of Critical Role, what was the time that everyone's like, ooh, we have to pay attention now. This is real. It was when Mollymock died. They're like, oh wait, this is real. It's not loosey-goosey. The GM isn't going to fudge a dice roll to save anyone. They could die. They could all die. Oh my goodness. Like, this was so many people's favorite character, and he died. Like, irredeemably. What? You know, then everyone watched, like I watched, everyone's like, I want to see what happens, because every session you come in, you know something bad could really happen. That's what you want for your session. You know, every once in a while, you've got to kill a character. And I don't mean like, go out and do it purposely, but let it happen. Do not fudge your dice rolls. If they walk into an owlbear's nest, don't say, well, y'all are only level 2. I guess it's a baby owlbear. Like, no, give it a freaking owlbear and have it kill them, because that's what the owlbear would do, right? You have to make it real, and then when it starts killing characters, they run for their lives. They are so immersed in your game, you got them hooked. You're like, hey, by the way, this is a real world, and you're in it, and they're like, oh, I'm scared. This is a real world. What do I do? And then they start to take it seriously. There's so many GMs who complain that, oh, the players are on their phone, and they're this, that. When you're on a tightrope, you're not distracted. You're not on your phone. No, you're paying very much attention, because your life is on the line, right? Do that with your games. It's the whole point of these adventure games. It's why why originally, old school, they're set in dungeons. Because the dungeon is the most dangerous place to be. So that's where they put the game, because that's where they knew the player would be the most immersed and the most focused on what they're doing. So yeah, absolutely. Give them danger, give them threat. You know, threaten their HP, their items, their friends, their quests. Like, there's so many things that players care about, right? But it's about what the players care about. Find out what the players care about, threaten that, watch them be immersed, and watch them have fun. And I mean threaten it. I don't mean just like hurt them over and over again, like threaten it. And if they don't play and do well, then let the natural consequences unfold. Let them get hurt. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I can't just let it go. You know, it's like telling the baby, don't touch the hot burner, and then he touches it, right? If it was a cold burner, he's like, I can touch it all I want, right? He didn't learn a lesson. When he goes to touch it that one time, it's like, it has to burn him. Yes, we don't want the baby to get burned, but it has to in order so he doesn't get burned later. If you don't want your players to be distracted, then when they stop caring about the game, don't ease up. When they're distracted, when they're not doing well, don't just ease up, oh, well, you know, I'll just fudge that. No, hit them hard, make it happen, and then they snap back and they pay more attention from then on. Yeah, it's unfortunate they lost a character, but they'll learn their lesson, and they will be engaged players from then on. They will be those 5-star players. All right. Back to my philosophy of freedom, power, status, and mystery. You can see this in a lot of places. One, D&D 5e, the 3 pillars of adventure. Exploration, freedom, combat, power, you know, how power opposes you and you defeat it and get the stuff back, get the treasure, and social interaction. Status, relationships with people. Like in D&D, they know, oh yeah, these are the three things that are the most fun. Yeah, they know it. They don't know the principles behind it, freedom, power, status, and mystery, but they know at least, like, yeah, these are those three. In other gaming spheres, they have the three concepts of autonomy, competence, and connectedness. This is in video games and in lots of places. It's called self-determination theory. It's what motivates gamers in gaming, like in any gaming really. Right. In self-improvement, like life and all that, it's known by three different names: health, wealth, and relationships. Health is freedom. If you don't have the freedom to go out and do things, you're bound by sickness. You can't really do anything in the first place. So you have to have your health first to be able to do something. Wealth is power, money is power. And relationships, health, wealth, and relationships. You see this repeated again and again and again. And again, mystery is just that, the shadow side of it where you don't have any of those yet. So it's not something that you gain, although I said previously you can gain mystery. But, in general, people just talk about the three pillars, even though there are technically four. And as GMs and game designers, we have to know the fourth pillar because that's ours. But in general, in the world, autonomy, competence, connectedness, health, wealth, and relationships. Exploration, combat, social interaction, freedom, power, and status, and mystery. All right. Next, we're getting to forever GM disease. There's a certain YouTuber. I'm not going to say his name. There's a certain YouTuber says that prep done before the session isn't somehow better than prep during the session. And you can change stuff in the middle of the session, and that's fine. Well, I think this GM is a forever GM. And he has that idea, like a lot of 5e GMs do, because they've never been a player. The problem with that idea is that if the players ever find out, it ruins it for them. If you ever find out, well, here, you may ask why. Whether you're making everything up an hour beforehand, or you're making everything up 5 seconds beforehand, or even during the session, you're still making it up, right? So what's the difference? That's his argument. Well, the problem is player perception. The problem, and that's not a problem, that's a good thing. Player perception isn't something to be done away with. It's the problem with that philosophy doesn't align with reality, which is player perception. So the problem is player perception. One of the key rules about the game is that the world has to be consistent. Why? We said previously, it has to be immersive. You are immersed when there are challenges, yes, but you're also immersed when it's consistent. If, the sun rises in the east and then in the west, and then, you're in a dungeon and the dungeon is made of goo, and now you're flying through space on an interstellar Star Trek ship, and now you're in the 21st century walking around, and now you're back in... It's not believable, right? It doesn't make any sense. If you want something crazy like that, well, you have to tell the players, like, this portal opens up and this eldritch deity, pulls you out and you fly through. Like, as long as it's believable, people are in it, they're okay. It's verisimilitude. But if you don't have that, you don't have consistency, then it breaks immersion. Breaks the fourth wall, all of the walls. It just wrecks the gameplay. We're here to be immersed. We're here to actually believe that when I get this, +1 sword, it's a real +1 sword, and I have it, right? If I know that the GM isn't consistent in what he does, and it's just mamby-pamby, it's whatever I want, and you have, I fudge the die, right? My rewards don't feel real. Nothing feels real. The world is not consistent. If it doesn't feel real, then no gameplay feels real. Nothing does. It's one of the sacred cardinal rules of D&D that there's no takesies backsies. You can't go do a thing and be like, wait, never mind, I don't do it, right? We don't retcon. Whatever happens, happens. It's real, right? Well, if everything that happens is real, that's telling you as the GM that, hey, prep real things. Make it real. Do not just make it up as you go, because then the world is inconsistent. I'll get to this later, talking about the quantum ogre and all that. All right, it has to be consistent, and one of the key rules about the game is that the world has to be consistent, and it being made beforehand and set in stone means it's consistent. Even if it was just an hour before the session. But if it's being made during the session, then it's not consistent, it's not reliable, and therefore the cardinal rule that the world has to be consistent for the players to enjoy it, the cardinal rule is broken. That's the difference. This YouTuber GM, he didn't realize that because he was only thinking about it from the GM's perspective instead of from the player's perspective. Being a forever GM makes people make these mistakes. And 5e is so poorly designed that so many people are forced into being forever GMs because it's so hard. And once you find one person to do it, you just force them to do it forever because it's so hard for the normal person to do it. Brings me to my next point. Forever DMs changed the game, changed the culture of play. I think, being young and having never actually experienced it, this is my hypothesis. I think that old school gamers used to switch roles a lot more than 5e players. We have this problem of the forever GM. Because 5e is so hard to run, so few people are able to do it. And those who can are in high demand, so they only get to GM. This leads to GMs developing styles and habits and ideologies about play that are one-sided. It's only from the perspective of the GM, that's all they've ever been, that's all they've ever known, so they make stuff that works for them. This is like the whole Quantum Ogre. Well, it's easier for me to move the encounter to here. It's all one-sided, and they justify it because, well, it makes sense to them. But if you've never been a player, you don't realize, oh, wait a minute, that stinks when my GM does a Quantum Ogre. Oh, that really stinks when my GM fudges a roll, right? They don't see that because they aren't players often enough. When GMs act as players, then they learn what's fun for players, and they have a more holistic, universal view of the game versus people who are only GMs. It's easy to miss some fundamental aspects of the game, and it's harder to relate to the players, and it probably leads to an adversarial mindset in a lot of people. This is just another way 5e has hurt the RPG space. I think more GMs should be players, and likewise players should be GMs, in order to balance out the game and educate everyone. It's a lack of education. Players don't know the struggles of GMs, and GMs don't know what it's like to be a player, and what the motives of traditional RPG play has always been. So the problem. Well, I guess we'll go to we'll go to the next thing. We're going to do concerning the Quantum Ogre first. So, Mike Shea from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master from Sly Flourish YouTube channel. He was reading off a Patreon question where the Patreon member said that if they were GMing a game and one of their players looked at some graffiti and got some information about a cult or some lore or something, and after the game they talked to their GM and asked about their prep, and they're like, wow, how did you know that I would go behind the bathroom and look at the graffiti? Like, how'd you know? And the GM told them about the concept of secrets and clues, and saying, oh yeah, well, I decided that I would have this information, and it would either be on a note, or you would hear it in passing, or it'd be on graffiti. Like I put it wherever made sense, wherever it happened to be. The person asking, Mike Shea the question said, this really happened, and the person asking the question was the GM, and he told his player, yeah, secrets and clues, I just moved it around, and the player was appalled. It's the same thing as the Quantum Ogre, and it's bad. The problem is the lack of consistency. Is the lack of the world being set in stone. If you have, an ogre encounter prepared, and the players can go into that part of the forest or into that dungeon, and they choose the forest, and you're like, here's an ogre. Or they go into the dungeon, and you say, here's the same ogre. Because you prepared one encounter, and you just have to put it wherever because you don't want to do that much prep. Well, that's fine only as long as the players don't figure it out. As soon as they figure it out, they're appalled. They say, this is like fudging dice. This is cheating. I want a real, consistent world. If you're telling me that I'm playing D&D and I'm in a real world, it's the promise of every fantasy game ever, even video games. You look at the back of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and it says, live a different life in another world, right? It's telling you that's the promise of all these games. And Oblivion got it from D&D. Like, it's the promise that you get to be a different person in a different world. What does it mean to be in a different world? That the world is real, a real different world, right? It's not a fake different world, a facade. No, it means it's real, right? So if I'm playing D&D and I'm a different character in a different world, I want the world to be real. If you are flipping it around and I only see what's in front of me, and you only build whatever I'm looking at as I turn to look at it, that is not immersive. That is not real. It's not why we play. It's just cheating. It's like you as the GM not doing your job. Okay? It's lazy. It is so lazy. And it has become the norm for 5e GMs, I think, as far as I can tell in the online spaces, that It's like, yeah, well, I just prepare this thing and I just fudge the die. I make sure we tell a good story. It's like, no. The traditional, truest, original culture of play for D&D and tabletop adventure games in general is you put me down in a real world and I get to do what I want in this real world. And if you tell me, oh yeah, the king's over there in his castle and the Dark Lord is in the the Dark Castle. I go to the king, he's in the castle. And I go to the Dark Castle and there's the Dark Lord, right? It has to be real and consistent. If it's not, it's just like, I can't even tell you how bad it is. It's just not a game. It's not D&D. Like, what are you doing? Why are we here if you're just going to put things around wherever you feel like? It takes away all autonomy from the player. Talk about player agency. It completely removes all player agency. If my choice to do one thing or another really doesn't matter at all, you've removed all player agency. I'm sitting down at the table next to you, and you take your boot and you just kick me out of the table and say, you're not welcome. I have a story to tell. I'm just going to tell it to myself, and what you say doesn't matter. It's so insulting. Why am I spending 4 hours out of my way coming to your house to play this game if my choices don't matter? If my successes and failures don't matter? What if I go to the bad guy and I defeat him and I take his +1 sword and you say, yeah, it's actually not a +1 sword because I felt like it. It's like, what player would stick around for that kind of game? You said it was a +1 sword. It was a +1 sword when he was using it against me. I pick it up, it's a +1 sword. The world has to be consistent. Okay? If I walk down the path and you're like, oh yeah, never mind, there's an ogre there now. Or, oh, you're low health, I guess there are no ogres anymore because, you need a rest. Like, no, absolutely not. Make the world consistent, make it real. It's fudging dice in a fundamental way where it's just lying to the players. It's a violation of trust, a violation of the social contract. We have come here, like, I don't just decide that, oh, I have, wish, it's on my character sheet now, I have the wish spell, I cast it. No, I'm bound by reality, by the reality of the game, the shared narrative. The GM should be too. You don't get to just do whatever you freaking feel like, okay? If the players ever found out, they would leave. Because it ruins the experience for them. You're saying you're not welcome at the table, you don't have any agency. I'm here to just be in charge. It's ridiculous. And that actually leads to my last point. We'll see if we can get through this quickly. GMs having ultimate power is the problem. The old school Rule 0 from old editions of D&D, gives the GM full power and full authority to ignore rules, change rules as they want, as long as it, still fun at the table. That's old and outdated and should not be used in your game systems or at your tables. The rules are there for the benefit of the players as much as the GM. They allow the players to actually enjoy some consistency in the world, and therefore player agency, because you can't have agency in a world that is not consistent. You can only push against a wall if it's not made of jello. Otherwise, your hands just go through it, and you can't actually move it. You need consistency to allow for player agency. The world has to be solid. I can't try to push the wall down or lean up against the wall. If any second you're like, if the wall's jello, you fall through it. It's like, the world needs to be hard. It needs to be real. Telling the GM that Rule 0 of the whole game is that they can do whatever they want, it just undermines the whole thing, undermines all consistency, undermines player enjoyment. That's one of the big reasons we have such a problem with railroading and the lack of real GM direction in RPGs nowadays. Gary Gygax was very authoritarian when he wrote his books. It was, the idea that the GM has 99% of the power and the other 1% is split between the rules and the players. But that's just not a good game design philosophy, gameplay philosophy. The rules, in our opinion, the rules bind the GM and the players. The world has to be consistent, and consistency is represented in the rules. Now, I don't mean that whatever rules Gary Gygax wrote down are sacred or anything. No, absolutely not. But the agreed upon rules by the group. If the group sits down to play D&D 5e, and they say, hey, are we having any homebrew, house rules, anything? Nope. Okay, we're playing D&D 5e. Done. From that moment on until you have another discussion about it, everyone is bound by the rules, including the GM. The GM is not allowed to say, oh, well, I decided to give this character an extra attack because I felt he should have it. No, absolutely not. You did not agree. The players did not agree to that. You broke the social contract. You're lying to the players. Stop it. You must spell everything out. You must tell them your homebrew, your house rules, all of it. They must agree to it. You are not their boss. You are bound by the rules as much as they are. If anyone has any homebrew, any house rules, anything, you all have to agree to it. Otherwise, it's one person just bullying the rest. GM, you are not allowed to be a bully. You're not allowed to just be like, well, I'm the GM, so what I say goes. Your character takes 10 points of damage because the sun was hot today. No, absolutely not. You do not have the right to do that. Every player has the right to get up and leave that game if that's what you're doing. You do not get to just be like, well, the ogre is over here. Oh, well, it's a holiday today and, all the prices are high. No, absolutely not. You must tell them. It must be consistent. I'm not saying you have to plan out the entire world in every bit of history before it ever happens, but anytime you change something or add something, you have to tell the players beforehand so they have a chance to react to it, so they know what the world is like. Anyway, there's a lot more to say, but my tablet is running out of memory. Patreon, I have a Kickstarter coming. More videos soon. Hopefully they'll be longer, because I think I'd rather make an hour-long video where I can just keep going on this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Patreon in description. Kickstarter coming soon. Keep an eye out. Like and subscribe. Feed the algorithm. All that stuff. Thank you. Goodbye.